Terry would never want to come back here, so I want to apologize for bringing him back here. But obviously, especially with talking to a lot of you with the last few days here, it was the right venue. And we're just overwhelmed by the support and just the turnout and where people came from to be here. And Terry was a very interesting guy, and nobody spent more time with him in the last 3.5 years than I did. And most of you probably haven't seen him for 10 years or more. So you guys kind of remember maybe what's going on here on the slideshow, but I just want to say a few things about just the last 3 years, and when he came to live with us. And really, I had a rare opportunity to get to know him and work with a brother that I hadn't really spent any time with in 35 years. And so that was an interesting new experience for both of us. So I'm calling this his, 3 days ago he would have been 62, so I'm calling this his combination birthday and retirement party. And he would have been so overwhelmed with this that I don't think he would have showed up at his own funeral. He would have been over with Rock Pat's drinking a beer. But 5 years ago, I was down here for another memorial for Mary Jane McSweeney. Terry, Timmy, and I went to that. And after that, we went back to his houseboat. The same houseboat that he lived in for a quarter century, which he thought he was going to live in for another quarter century. And he had been working at Black Bear Adventure for several years before that, but had always come back to the houseboat in the winter. But this time, he informed us that he was going to move to Alaska full time. So he sold his houseboat, his vehicle, and did just that. He lived and worked about 100 miles north of Anchorage. And I'd never been, so later on in 2016, I made arrangements to go out and visit him up there. And I can't tell you how much different it was to see him up there out of Lauderdale for the first time ever at his own place in Alaska. And I never saw him happy. So while we were there, we had moose steaks, and we had bear burgers from a bear that was shot by one of his co-workers during an attack a few weeks before. And we did all kinds of things that, we never had the time to do together. He took me on a backcountry four-wheeling trip, like 50 miles. It was just stunning back in way in the backcountry. We landed on a glacier. And then while we were there, it was in the low 40s during the day, it was in the teens at night, and we saw the river like ice over for the first time, and he'd never seen that. He'd never really been in the water. He lived here his whole life. We visited up north every now and then, but he never spent a winter in a place like this. So his sense of humor, he was always, it was like Tara said it best when he was with us. It was kind of like having Uncle Buck move in with him. That's just the perfect way to describe it. So the second day we were there, it had been really cold, and we got a porch. And he stepped down on the porch, and he didn't see the ice. And he's right on his back, slumped right on his back. And he said, "Welcome to my first Alaska winter." So he took me over. He had a part-time job. He was going to help this guy build his house, and in return, his Terry was one of the bargain. He was going to let Terry live in this 12 by 14 cabin over the winter with no indoor plumbing. So he took me over to see this place, and there was an outhouse like 50 feet behind the. I said, you're not going to do that, right? I said, nah, I'll just, yeah, okay, well, I don't want to hear the details. But after I left, I kept in contact with him. He didn't have phone service, but he had internet. And I never really been with anybody. I wanted to see what the first winter was like. So he showed me, started sending pictures. So he sent a picture with an inch thick ice on the inside of the cabin. And then the next picture he sent, there had been a big snowstorm and this place was down on a bank. And at the time he couldn't get out of there for like 2 or 3 weeks. And he sent a picture of like 50 pennies stacked up and saying the only caption was waiting for the next earthquake. He had a big cold snap. I always checked the weather up there, so it was going to get like 35 below. And I'd always read that that your piss freezes before it hits the ground at that temperature. So I asked him to give it a shot. And he obliged and sent me a video. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me. But it made a weird crackling sound with his laughter in the background. It was just awesome. But after that winter, the bottom line was that Fort Lauderdale, Florida man did not dig his first Alaska winter too much. So since I'm a contractor out where I am, and Terry had made himself into a very good Finnish carpenter, which is a tough order to do after what he did for so many years, which was like a purchasing agent for the cruise ship lines. And so I told him they could come and live with us during the winter and I'd find him work. And I had a rare chance to live and work with him so many years after the fact. And contrary to what many of you might have heard, even from him, it was not like, working for me wasn't like being installed on Move 17. I remember the first time he was talking about, what are you going to pay me? And you know, I'm kind of like, well, you got to kind of show me what you can do first. I said, don't get hung up on it. Just, I'll tell you what you're worth. It was, anyway, we worked it out, and we did dozens of jobs together around there, mostly the Mexican guys, and they called us Los Dos Gringos Viejos. And so we did dozens of jobs down there. The first year he came down, he didn't have his car, and my buddy Bart's here, and Bart had a condominium. Let's just say it was down near San Jose that Terry and I helped turn into the only 7-bedroom condo in San Jose, in a place that Shelby made nameless. The second year, he brought his van down with the ferry, and this van was like his baby. It was a Dodge van, old Dodge van, in good condition, and he loved that thing. But Terry was an excellent cook. And after he moved down with us, I never burnt the prime rib. I had to give a turkey to the dog and eat. And while he was cooking, he'd always tell us why, in fact, he was the best cook in the family. And, boy, I'd love to have a cook-off. I'd be the judge. But everybody. It would be a hell of a cook. But the best thing about having him around is doing his impersonations and his stories. And maybe his best story, and it took almost an hour to tell how he told it, was the tale of when him and Todd took the train back from Tara's wedding from Philadelphia to New York with the remnants of the liquor from the wedding. And, after I'm done, I'm going to invite anybody else that wants to come up and say anything, but there's 2 great versions of this story, and Todd's here, and Todd has his version. I'll be here. I think they got thrown off in South Carolina. So after the first year he was there, he saved enough money to buy a really nice Arctic fifth wheel, which he had towed over here in this river, and he set up a porch there and had a really nice setup right on the river. And that's where he was living up until last year. The last time I came down in September of 2019, I had to use his precious van because my truck was in the shop to go get some material. And I'd never drove this thing. So he's watching me pull away, and I hit the gas instead of the brake and ram it against a tree across the street. I fucked up his hood and knocked out his taillight, and you should have seen his face. Like, it was like I just crucified his son. And after that, I gave him some money for the van, for the material, and bought a new hood. And you know, the old hood, the dented hood is still behind my tool shed, and I can't get myself to throw it away. But I always miss him when I left before to go to work. And those of you who know him, when he said this for years, we talked about work, he'd look at me a deadpan and say, I ain't busting my ass for nobody. And he did it so well, you just wanted him to say it again. And you know, it was always great having him there. But last year, in our last job, we did about, a little over a year ago, last May, he hurt his hip. He'd never complained about nothing. He never missed a day. Great worker, never, always there. And he said, God, my hip's killing me. And a day later, he was on crutches. And so the last couple of weeks he was with us, he didn't work. And his hip was really bothering him. So when he left, and I didn't want him to leave. And when he left, I said to my daughter and a couple other people that we knew, I don't know, I just had a bad feeling I wasn't going to see him. So, you know, here we are, but where I live, I still drive around, and during the day goes by that I see something we didn't work on together, able to fix, and he's always just a thought or two away in my mind. And I just want to thank you all for being here and helping us celebrate his life, and also celebrating, and this is kind of a testament to where we grew up, when we grew up, that all of you people are here, some of them, which I haven't seen in more than 40 years. That's just so special that you can't put a value on it. It was just great to grow up here when we did. And, I'm so glad that we came back here, even though he may be one of but again, thanks for being here. I'd like to invite anybody else that wanted to come up and maybe tell a story or say something about him to come up and do so. Thank you.